Hi, Karen Campbell, and thanks for joining us. We're very excited to hear from you today. First of all, how are you? How have you been during lockdown?
Hello, and thank you very much for having me. I've been okay. Found it quite hard to write at first. I
Have
think,
you?
yeah, I think, I don't know how other writers have felt, but it just felt to me because the real world is so upside down,
Yeah,
and normally you kind of escape into a world in your head, when you're writing. It was like I couldn't imagine a more topsy-turvy world than the one I was living through, and it kind of, I don't know, writing felt a bit superfluous in
yeah.
one way, and also I didn't know what to write about because when you're writing, I mean, normally it's contemporary fiction. My last book was historical,
Mhm.
but
Is
other
that the
ones have
one
been.
that's the one that was set in Tuscany, was it?
Yes, yes. This is
Yeah.
The Sound of the Hours. It was set
Oh,
in Tuscany in World War II.
oh,
So that it took me 4 years to do that one. So I had to go to Italy twice for research, which
did
is very
you?
onerous, but I did.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
Whereabouts did you go? Is it Barga? Is that?
Barga,
Yeah,
Barga. It's about an hour from Pisa,
lovely.
and it's just gorgeous. But anyway, apart from that book, all the books I've written have been contemporary. So
Yeah,
you're writing about the world round about you. And with COVID, I didn't want to write about COVID,
yeah,
and but it's nothing but COVID at the moment, and you couldn't even have two characters in a cafe together because that's against the law. So
yeah, yeah.
that was really tricky. But very fortunately, around about middle of summer, I became writer in residence at Dumfries and Galloway Council,
Oh, brilliant.
and what my job was to do was actually to speak to staff and write fiction, but about their experiences working during COVID.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
it
Oh,
actually it was brilliant because it allowed me to look at COVID straight in the eyes because that was my
yeah,
job.
yeah,
But from other people's eyes as well,
yeah.
talking to a carer, talking to a teacher working from home,
Yes, yes.
a bin man amazed that for the first time in his life he was getting presents left on the bin van because folk were so grateful, that he was
Yeah,
coming to take the rubbish. So
yeah,
that actually, it was really good, I think, for my soul as much
yeah,
as anything, but
yes,
also creativity.
yes,
It just kind of sparked ideas that I wouldn't have otherwise had. So,
yeah.
and I just finished really a couple of weeks ago the last story. So it's
Oh, that's
actually been
fantastic.
quite a nice, not a distraction, but a really important part of lockdown for me.
So timely. And so will that be coming out as a collected set of stories or?
Well, it's not going to be sort of published traditionally. It was part of a bigger project called Atlas Pandemica, which was a region wide. I live in Dumfries and Galloway now,
Yeah,
although I'm from Glasgow originally.
yeah,
So it was a region wide arts project, and lots of different artists have been doing different responses, if you like, to
yeah,
COVID.
yeah.
So there's an overall piece of art which is going to be like maps that are made of everyone's individual projects,
Hmm.
but very generously the council have agreed to actually publish the stories in hard copy as well. They will
Brilliant.
live on the website, but it just means that
Yeah,
the members of staff that actually spoke to me, I can say, there you go, that's your story or
yeah.
part of your story in a book, which is really nice.
Because it
So
is quite a kind of life-defining period for a lot of people, isn't it? Who are, especially people who are having to work through it, go out and work through it, and that's brilliant that it's being recorded. I know. I
yeah,
mean,
it was
we've
really
been on a kind of in a different way completely. We've been trying to keep the reading groups going as much as we can. And a lot of the groups have either been meeting on Zoom or during the summer when they could, they would meet in little twos and threes and that kind of thing. And
good.
that's something I wanted to ask you about actually was your book, This Is Where I Am, which is the one that we've got in our reading groups. So, oh, are you still there? Are you frozen? Oh, you're
Oh,
still there?
still here.
Yeah. Did you hear what I said? I was just asking you about the
About
book, This Is Where I Am. Yeah.
This Is Where I Am.
So this is the one that we have in the reading group collections, and I wonder how does that feel as a writer to have a group of people sitting around talking about your book? Do you like that, or does that how does that make you feel? And is there anything you can tell us about that book in particular?
Okay. I love it. I love, writing's a solitary profession. So when you go out, and that's one thing I've really missed this year is,
Yeah,
I've done the odd Zoom thing, but it's not the same as being in a library and seeing folk and having a conversation. So I really enjoy that. And I would say probably I did the creative writing masters at Glasgow Uni before my first novel. That's basically what sort of gave me the confidence, I would say, to go for it as a writer. And the first thing I think that made me think I can do this is in that course, we had to do workshops where your short story would be analysed and talked about by the rest of your group.
Oh, really?
And when you're a new writer, it's, you know, what you've written is really precious, and it's like you're exposing yourself on the page, and
That must be
you want folk
terrifying.
to, you know, to like it. And so that was really daunting. But what I learned quite quickly is people start to see things that you hadn't thought of when you read it, or when you write it rather. So two people were sort of arguing about the motivations of one of my characters, and I'm thinking, I never thought that when I wrote it, but that sounds really good. And that's what I love about when the book's being read by readers, and then I hear from them that people might see something in a story that I hadn't thought of. But I think that's why we all love books for different reasons, because books, if they're written in such a way that a sort of small personal story can be universal, or it can just chime with something you've felt as well,
Yes.
you'll take what that means to you away, and it'll be different from what I thought when I was writing it. But it's like you're having a communication with the book almost, which is lovely.
That's a great way of thinking about it, actually, because we never get the same two responses about the book. But I mean, you know, people generally, you know, really love a book or really don't love a book, but what, like you say, what they'll come to it with is completely their own perspective and their own journey and their own path. So yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. And have you ever been in a reading group?
Well, I'm in a book group actually at the moment, that some friends have. We started down here before lockdown, but we've kept it going with Zoom as well.
And
that has been really good too, because I think you can get, I mean, I try and read widely, but I think you can get into a rut with what you read and what you like to read.
Yeah, definitely.
And a book group just pushes you out of your comfort zone, and it'll make you read something you might not have otherwise picked up. You might still think, didn't like that, but you might love something. You might discover a new writer. But what I've also found is the discussions afterwards. It's like you're reading the book again, and even something you might have thought, I didn't like that. Once you've chatted, you think, oh yeah, and it gives you a different perspective. And it's, and also I think your conversations, I suppose it depends how long the book group or the reading group's been going together, but you start to develop friendships that way too, because what's in the book then triggers something that you say, well, I mind when this happened to me, and people start to get to know each other a wee bit too, which is great.
That's true. Yeah, you can actually get to know someone over a book. That's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. I'm intrigued about the fact that you started your career in the police force, and I know some of your earlier books are set, you know, in the crime world. So, could you tell us anything about that? I mean, what was the journey from
how did it happen?
What happened?
I know. I did used to sort of start talks off sometimes by saying, I can see you looking at me thinking, she used to be in the police. And she can write. She's literate too.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons I started to write about the police, because I wanted to try and move away from maybe a stereotypical view of special uniform cops. You know, they're kind of knuckle dragging, not very bright, to just talk about what it really feels like to have a uniform on and be a young woman in the middle of Sauchiehall Street at 3 a.m. thinking, they've put me in charge. I don't know what I'm doing, but you have this uniform of authority. But I mean, I did English at university before I joined the police. So I always think that the police was a kind of deviation.
The police was the journey. Yeah. So
I joined the police because when I studied English at Glasgow, because I love books. By the time I'd finished university, I hated books because the magic had gone out of them, because I was studying them and analysing them, and I stopped reading for pleasure, and I just thought, I want to do something practical. And rooting about for what could I do. My dad was a policeman. My mum had been a cop. That's how they met. So, and I know some folk that became teachers because that's what one of their parents were. I think when you're young and you don't know what you want to be, sometimes you go to what's familiar. So graduated 1 week from Glasgow and joined the police the next, and then quickly realised that probably I was not the best police officer in the world. So I stuck it out for nearly 6 years, but
But what an insight though! What a different route, and that's, I mean, I know I've heard a lot of writers say that nothing's wasted, nothing that you do in your life is wasted, because it's all fodder for whatever it is you end up writing about or thinking about, or
Mhm.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
so you obviously had a love of books if you studied English. So did you, what was your experience of libraries when you were growing up?
Um, I got a couple of really strong book related memories. One was my mum coming home from work when I don't know if I started school, but I was about 5. And somebody at her work, her daughter had got grown up and was getting rid of all of her books. So my mum brought this big box of books home.
Uh-huh.
And it was things like Enid Blyton and,
Brilliant.
Faraway Tree and stuff. But
Yeah.
it was just like diving into heaven. It was just, one world after another. And another really strong memory I have, which I think is before that, is being taken to the library for, I think the first time, because it was like a children's story corner. I don't even know if I could read at that point.
Yeah.
And it was the Cooper Institute in Glasgow,
Uh-huh.
which is a lovely sort of dark, wood panelled, the way libraries should be, I
Sort of
think. That
old-fashioned library, yeah.
sense of almost reverence about books.
Yeah.
And I wasn't scared as a child. It felt, this is somewhere really special I'm going into, and being quiet was a good thing, because it made it like, I don't know, I just knew that this was like an important, sacred's the wrong word, but somewhere I should be
I was just going to
reverent.
say,
And
yeah,
yeah,
because in the absence of, a lot of churches and things in our society, the library, I remember that as a child as well, going into the library and feeling like, oh, this, and the smell and
uh-huh.
the kind of, all of yeah, like you say, all of those stories kind of just waiting to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes sense completely.
I mean, I get that libraries are more friendly and welcoming places now, but I dispute the fact that kids can't behave differently in different environments. And there was something magical about,
Yeah.
this wasn't a place to run about and just pull things out. It was selective and quiet, and you had time to think and digest.
Yeah.
And maybe not for every child, but for sort of a bookish child, that was really, really a special thing.
It's your own nature, isn't it? And if that was your nature, which it clearly was, then that's where you're comfortable, and that's brilliant. So, oh, that's fantastic. So you were saying, obviously you've been doing your pandemic project, if that's the right word for it. And do you have anything else sort of in the pipeline coming up, or are you just kind of taking it how it comes, or what's next for you?
I do. And actually, I've got a new book that's going to be coming out next year.
Have you?
So I am doing the edits at the moment.
Oh, that's exciting. That's very good news. Brilliant.
My remarks are in red. Yes. The first time I got a first book deal, and I had no idea about editing, and the editor's like, oh, I love your book, I'll just send you a few notes. And then you get all these screeds of, do this, do that. But actually this new editor, she's lovely, and it's not too awful, the edits, and I'm quite enjoying the process. But to go back to This Is Where I Am, one of the things that people often ask about is the ending of that book.
Yes.
And that sense of, there's so much more to tell about those characters, and tell me more. And I've been asked, will you ever write a sequel? And I said no, because I always like a book that gives you some conclusion, you feel satisfied, but you also have this sense that those characters are still living after the book shuts, and they're walking on and doing their own thing. But in this new book, there's a sort of minor character, and This Is Where I Am, who becomes quite a major character in the new book. And it's a guy called Dexy, who was the big issue seller.
Yes,
so he's in this new book, and actually Abdi gets a mention, just a brief one line, but for anyone that knows and enjoys This Is Where I Am, it just gives the reader that wee bit of information about how he's doing in his life now. You never see him, but it's a wee nod to him that, and him and Dexy are still pals as well.
That is absolutely brilliant, and I know that there's going to be loads of people who'll be like, yes. Oh, that is fantastic. So I mean, in a way, that's like almost like a kind of carrying the, like a relay race, isn't it? Passing on the baton type of thing. And I mean, that's in the editing stage, so that's quite far on, obviously.
Yeah, so it should be out. I don't know if it'll be next spring or next summer. At the moment, it's called Paper Cup. I'm hoping it stays that, because I really like the title.
Paper Cup, did you say?
Paper Cup.
Mm-hmm. Cup, yeah, cup.
Cup, as in what you hold. And it's about homelessness.
Yeah.
but the specific story, it's set down here in the southwest of Scotland.
Yeah.
Partly because I'd spent so long immersed in Italy and all the war and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was easy for me to research because it was here, but also because we've moved here since about 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you tend not to explore what's on your doorstep unless we've got folk down to stay. We don't go and visit sort of touristy places. So it's like a pilgrimage trail, and it sort of follows the St Ninians pilgrimage route. So I actually did the route in the car, some of it, but it was a good way for me to get to know this area too. So the story is of a homeless woman who's in Glasgow at the start of the novel. An incident happens that basically freaks her out and makes her want to return home. And as she's kind of wending her way deliberately slowly back, in flashbacks, you learn why she became homeless in the first place and what she was running away from and what she's going back to.
Mm-hmm. God, that sounds absolutely brilliant. I mean, homelessness is such a massive problem, isn't it? Just, I mean, you must have seen that in your previous career as well. And yeah, I mean, it's just, and how people become homeless, like you say, the story of that is always just fascinating, but obviously very sad. And I'm sure you're going to treat it fantastically well, and that's exciting. So yeah, I mean, maybe another reading group book on the way for us.
Hopefully by the time it's printed I can actually go to libraries again and talk about it, which should be lovely.
I know, that's the thing. I know. Oh, it's been fantastic to talk to you, really wonderful. And what are you doing today? Are you writing today, or?
I'm doing some more edits. I've made myself have a sort of 30-page a day goal to get to, and if I do more than that, it's a bit how I write as well. Like if you don't make it too 500 words or however many pages, if you don't make it too difficult, then you'll probably start it. If you make it ridiculously high to meet, you won't even begin the task. So I'm breaking it into chunks. So I'll do a wee bit more editing this afternoon,
bit more,
and then it'll be glass of wine time probably.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. And are you able to read at the moment? I know a lot of people are finding it difficult to read. So, I mean, have you got any book recommendations for us, or anything that you're interested in reading at the moment?
Yeah, I recently finished this one, Mayflies by Andrew O'Hagan.
Okay, I haven't read that one.
Which is, for someone that grew up in the 80s, this book is split in two halves, but the first half is a bunch of young lads from Ayrshire going down to Manchester for a gig. And there's just a lot of references that chime with me, and it's about friendship, and it's about the second half is when they're grown up and how you're not the same person you thought you were, but maybe you are. Maybe, how sometimes you can be friends with someone from school, and actually when you prize the bonds, is there anything else keeping you together? But equally, you can meet somebody you've not seen for 10 years and you just click and go back. So I've really enjoyed that. And one I'm about to start, which I haven't begun yet, is this one. It's called A Tomb with a View. You can't really see it, by Peter Ross. He's a journalist, an arts journalist, and he's a really great feature writer. And this, I haven't begun it, but it's had lots of good reviews, and it's basically a selection of sort of vignettes and not fiction, stories and observations based around graveyards. But one of the blurbs says that they've never seen so much life in a book about the dead. So I think that looks quite an interesting one to dip into as well.
Who was that by, Karen? Sorry, that looks really good.
Peter Ross. He's a journalist in Scotland, an arts journalist.
That's right, Peter Ross. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm reading Love After Love, and I've instantly forgotten who it's by. Set in Trinidad.
Oh,
it's fantastic.
Yeah, I know the one.
I'll link it to the thing. and that's, I'm really enjoying that one, actually, I must say. It's fantastic. Some of it's in America, but some of it's in Trinidad. Yeah, really, really good. But listen, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us today. And don't go anywhere, because after I've unrecorded us, I'll say goodbye to you, but thank you officially, and we will look forward to your new book coming out, and the all of the stuff that you were talking about with COVID as well sounds fantastic. So thank you, Karen Campbell. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Very welcome.